up, y'all? Y'all are listening to Living Corporate's flagship podcast. If you didn't know, Living Corporate helps organizations build employee engagement and market trust through data analytics and data transformation, our e-learning platform, and brand marketing storytelling. We're so excited for you to be here today. The conversation you're about to hear is going to connect the dots between employee experience and go-to-market effectiveness. If you're not ready, get ready. Here we go. Gardy, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well, brother. Thanks for inviting me first and foremost. It's an honor.
Hey, it's an honor to have you on Living Corporates. Always a pleasure to talk to our guests here. You know, I got to show you love. First of all, the last name, man. Like, are you people from Louisiana?
That's a common understanding because it is a French last name, Guiteau. My people are originally from Haiti, the island nation that did the Dizzle back in 1804.
Yo, first of all, shout out to Haiti, free Haiti. Without Haiti, man, we wouldn't have a lot. Like we wouldn't have, like, Haiti is so foundational, not only to like how we understand resistance and freedom and liberty as marginalized people, specifically Black people, Africans around the world, but also our functional freedom, right? Like we wouldn't have it without them. And so yo, shout out to you, shout out to your people, shout out to your lineage, shout out to your family. You know, it's interesting. I recall, what's that man's name? But whoever, I forgot his, I'm like not trying to be funny. I literally forgot his name. The leader of Sherm National. He had a commercial where he's sitting in a coffee shop and he's talking about civility. And he's talking about like this concept of just being civil at work. And, it reminded me of the summer that George Floyd was murdered. About a week before he was murdered, someone pitched themselves to come on my podcast to also talk about civility. It's a white man. And he was talking to me about, we had the podcast and, you know, I was just kind of on it, but we recorded it anyway. But the reason I was on it is because I don't know, I struggle, Gardy, to contextualize civility outside of like lived experience and identity. So when we had the podcast with this person, it was just more like, well, it's just about being able to be nice and not get upset, even if you disagree with somebody. And so for me, I'm like, okay, but like, if someone holds views that are antithetical to my existence,
it's hilarious. I'm laughing because I'm looking at your background and you have Brother James Baldwin in the background, and he's famous for teaching us, right, about the fact that very fact that, you know, we can quote unquote agree or disagree, so long as the disagreement isn't grounded in your denying my human existence and my human dignity and my ability to be a free human on this planet. Yeah. And so, period.
I mean, well, I think, look, you look right here, you see, I got Kwame Ture over here as well. And so there's this idea of just like, it's almost like we, some of the language, right? And I want to get right to it because we're here for a good time, not a super long time, but like some of my challenges, I think, were in this moment, right? I mean, when we use certain language and because I recognize that this landscape is shifting and changing around the types of language we use. So you're not using quote unquote DEI language as much anymore, but we're still trying to kind of get some of these principles out. And so one of the Trojan horses I'm seeing people try to use is civility, but I think we're in a dangerous place where when we become too abstract from the items that we're really seeking to get to the heart of, we don't really go anywhere.
Yeah. So what I think about that, as you were posing this, I thought about two things, right? I thought about, you know, on the one hand, the issue of, you know, what exactly do we mean by civility, and how does that live as a baseline function possibility, you know, possibly compared to and in concert with rather the bigger framings of what, you know, has become villainized, right, in the current parlance of, you know, diversity, you know, somehow becoming a bogey, you know, man term, you know, equity, inclusion to a certain extent, and the need to then reframe as a result of, you know, these terminology being villainized and co-opted to a certain extent, right? But at the base of it, the purpose of the work had always been and is about making sure that, as I kind of talked about a little earlier, that human dignity and, actually recognizing others and valuing them for who they are in our communities, in our organizations, in the workplace is practiced. And so if that is the goal of the work we do, as and I also think about the fact that in some ways the shifts that we're seeing are A, not new, and B, necessary, given the fact that at the end of the day the work will always be the work of supporting folks, right? But the piece about civility to me is really the very ground floor level of what this should be, right? That at the very basic level that, I'm going to not disrespect you, right? And therein comes that word respect in the conversation of civility and respect. And I had a conversation with a sister on my own platform, last year, and Janet and Stovall, and I talked about the difference between civility and respect and why we have to hold those differences, as civility being the bare minimum and respect being about actually starting to see people for who they are and respecting them and valuing them. And if we're doing that, then we could begin to actually extract the innovative power of the folks in our communities.
I think so. It's interesting because it feels like we kind of like in this moment, right? So I think to your point about demonizing language and scapegoating language, which is not a new phenomena. There's an opportunity, or there's this thing that we're doing where we just keep on kind of regressing to like lower and lower expectations. So like in real life, like, no, I just don't believe right now, to be clear, I have not been in an office like Monday through Friday in a while, but I don't believe people at work are literally screaming at each other, throwing things across the office for conversations, right? So this idea of we should listen and not, and have some modicum of politeness discussion, mm-hmm. or whatever, politeness. Like, I don't think that's the real thing. What I just wish people would stand on is this is not about not screaming or being uncivil. This is about, for so many people, not everyone who uses this rhetoric or language or approach, this is about people who are on the margins being comfortable with and amenable to being disrespected, right? Like, that's what we're actually having a conversation about. We're not having a conversation about not screaming and not being rude, because the reality is that most people are fairly conflict averse, right? Conflict aversion is something that's like, we're predisposed to that as living creatures. Most living things are conflict averse because you survive when you avoid conflict. So we're not like, that's not what we're doing. We're not taming, the workplace is not some wild place to be tamed. The workplace is a place where people come together, they do their job, and they go home. Like, that's what the workplace is. However, what's happening is that I believe, right, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this. I think before George Floyd, of course, there was Trayvon Martin, there's Sandra Bland, or countless people, but like these ongoing televised murders of Black and brown people, ongoing anti-queer, anti-trans legislation. There's like the people on the margins are being like more openly and unrepentantly harmed. And we're seeing it in real time. And so there's employees who are represented in these populations, women who are getting their rights taken away. And, there's all sorts of things that are happening in real time. And so then these employees, they come to work and they carry those things with them because they're human beings. And so I believe some of the stuff is, hey, y'all, just because so-and-so said this to you or dismissed your idea or micro or macroaggressed you doesn't mean you have to confront them about it or say that you're offended or check them about it anyway. Just be civil instead.
You see my deep breath because what that does is that it takes the responsibility away from the organization to address culture, as opposed to ensuring that individuals are taken care of and held to account to a higher standard, right? Because the reality is that we know, and as you mentioned, our employees, members of our organizations, don't check their feelings, their experiences, their emotional lives at the door when they step into our spaces. They bring all of that with them, and they bring, with them all of the baggage, the good and the bad and the ugly as well. And so if we are intentional about supporting in a culture where Jay can say something to Jen, and Jen feels empowered enough to say to Jay, yo, that was out of pocket. That was a little bit off color. How do we deal with that? Then that requires that, the leaders in the organization to have done the work to acknowledge those different folks' experiences, make it okay for them to bring their full, not the full raggedy self, but the full best self, right, to work, and be able to know that if stuff pops off, we can rely on mutual respect and understanding to speak to it and address it. It's funny that you're speaking to this now. I was reading something yesterday, and I forget the name of the sister at Harvard who's doing this work with her colleagues, specifically on how, when microaggressions occur within the workplace, the way that you can actually heal from it or grow from it is if at the outset the groundwork had been done by the organization to develop the stores of respect and stores of understanding and stores of mutual support within teams, so that when that ouch moment happens, it can be spoken to, and then mutually folk can work on improving it. But you can't just be like, okay, shut up and take it because we're here to be civil, because that is the very way that you end up having things become bigger issues and festering and growing and causing bigger fissures on teams. And then, of course, you lose effectiveness, you lose cohesion, you lose everything.
It's interesting. Like, I think about this, even respect, right? Like conceptually, respect at its most foundation. When I think about the term, it is an agreement that you and I are in some ways equal, in that your voice and perspective is just as worthy to be heard as mine, and that your time is just as valuable as mine. That your expertise or point of view, while potentially different than mine, has just as much inherent value as mine. But the challenge, when you think about some of these isms, or anis, you think about racism and sexism and homophobia and Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and the list goes on and on, ableism. All of these isms, they undercut the ability for that type of respect. And it's tough, man, because, so I think about Living Corporate, right? So Living Corporate a few years ago, we called ourselves, and we were like a platform that centered and amplified Black and brown perspectives at work, and explicitly fought to center and amplify and fight for fairness for Black and brown people at work through the podcast and through our learning platform, which at that time was very new. And as time went on, we said, okay, well, we're about to also introduce data transformation, analytics, and insights. And so we're going to pivot away from this mission statement of centering Black and brown to employee and customer experience and creating fair experiences for all, which we are, and that's true. That's what we do. And I'll say, admittedly, part of the calculus in that for me was, okay, I'm looking at the landscape. Some of this language is being demonized. I think people won't see us for hearing us, or vice versa. So how can we show up in a way that is inclusive and also honors what we're doing? But I also, and like I say that confessionally because I also do believe that like as uncomfortable and unpopular as it is, it's not in vogue to like really be invoking identity and other parts of yourself in this moment because of just the political landscape from like right-wing talking heads and the Trump administration. We actually kind of need that work. We need the work from, again, we need pure, honest, intentional versions of the work from 5 years ago right now.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I appreciate pure, honest, and intentional. And I would add effective versions of the work. And the reason I add effective is because we know that in order for this work to have the impact that we want it to, and that is to, in my opinion, to name issues of misaligned and ill distributed, access to resources and power, whether that's, as a result of, racism, sexism, heterosexism, ableism, anti-Semitism, so on and so forth, as you mentioned. The whole point of doing the work that we do is to say, hey, left to our own devices, unfortunately, our tribal mentality will lead folks to, hoard resources in one space and not really give access to others that are not part of the quote unquote tribe, intentionally or unintentionally, consciously or unconsciously. And so the way we guard against that in our communities and in our organizations is to, A, name that that's something that happens, and B, equip folks with the tools necessary to actually recognize when that's happening, interrupt it when it's happening, and put in place policies and practices, right, that can support widening the pie, right, and move away from, the kind of scarcity mindset, that we see too often. And even in the space of respect, as you're saying, right, because the issue of, scarcity mindset can be applied to respect insofar as if I believe that there's only so much respect to go around and that it has to be attributed to me and my people, then that means, in a binary way of thinking, the respect is over here and it can't be over there, as opposed to we need to share it.
That's profound. I've never thought to intersect the concept of respect and scarcity mindset, but that's spot on. Like, man, I'll never forget, man, Gardy, man, I was at this, working at a tech company, and I built this product, but this, like, it was like basically it was a tech solution, but it doesn't matter. The point is I built this thing, and this other team came along and literally copy and pasted my work. Okay. So they copied and pasted they copied and pasted my presentations. They copied and pasted my FAQ document. They copied and pasted the name and then just changed a little letter in it, like just comical levels of plagiarism. Right. And so, and I remember I said, we had a whole meeting about it. I said, hey, listen, I just would like I ain't even tripping about copying people's work at work. Like, all of the IP belongs to the company we work for. So principally I'm frustrated, but you did not technically steal from me. So in the spirit of looking to move forward, I gave some fairly direct overtures of us collaborating. I said, hey, listen, I just want us to work together. Like, I would like for us to respect each other. Can we work together? And they literally just sat there in silence, like no commitment to work. And I said, so to be clear, I want to be clear that I'm asking for us to work together, and y'all are ignoring that. Like, I keep asking, y'all keep ignoring me, right? But what I realized, though, like in this conversation, as I think about your model, is there's a scarcity mindset. Hey, there's only so many ideas that can work. We don't have a good idea, so we're going to take your idea because it's a zero-sum game. We don't have an idea. We've tried some things, they don't make sense. Your idea makes sense, so we're going to just take your idea. And we want all the credit for the idea. So we're going to take your idea, tell you that your idea is bad, and then not work with you on the idea that we took from you, right? And I think, like, that's tough, man. Let me ask this, like, in your facilitation work today, Do you find that as you work with teams and help them understand how to organize, structure, and just team more effectively, do you find yourself running against some of these things more than you did maybe a couple years ago? And I ask this because I would imagine as economic contexts shift and change and become even more parabolic and become more unstable, become more uncertain, that certain tribalistic behaviors would like increase. But like maybe my assumption is wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't know that the assumption is wrong. I will say that I have not personally observed this outright, right? That being said, I know that, as you're noting, the current economic landscape for so many organizations and businesses is not one that is not without A, uncertainty, and B, as a result of that uncertainty, a lot of, again, safeguarding of resources, and then therefore, hiring, has come to a, not a halt, but is being reserved, and all the different things that come with that. So I would say that I would not disagree with you that a byproduct of all of this is that internally employees are wary, and if what has been constructed is a culture where hierarchy is prioritized, and not be able to actually challenge or dissent is normative, then folks are absolutely and have proven to be more likely to engage in that kind of behavior of engaging and seeing and thinking about the scarcity of whether it's good ideas, but on the flip side of it, the scarcity of being able to be seen, right, as a valuable asset to the organization, because there are only so many slots available for me to be elevated, right? To be given a choice project, or to be, given the opportunity to show my capacity and my ability, that, that the amount of competition and competitive way of engaging increases, and not good competition, right? Because we know good competition, only, iron sharpens iron, only helps to elevate, our skills and capacity, but that toxic competition that ends up being, an example that you showed. So while I haven't seen it, I would say that I agree that in organizations that haven't done the work to embed what we call, what I focus on, which is, kind of a dialogic way of engaging, right? So dialogic organizational development that assumes, at the very basic of it, we don't have all the right answers. We have some great answers, but some of our great answers might not be the best in the room. And that we don't fully understand everything that is to understand about the challenge we're facing. And only in engaging with one another intentionally, by listening, by building rapport and building, some real connective tissue within a team, can we have the baselines of both respect and start to build trust, of one another enough to challenge one another respectfully and level up whatever we're working on. Because once we do that, then we can be engaged with each other as, folks who are working together as a team, like you said, as opposed to competing with each other in a very toxic, problematic way, because we're assuming that there are only so many opportunities available for us to get up.
So, you're doing this work, you're facilitating these sessions, helping organizations, again, just team better. I find that intriguing, especially in this context where layoffs are becoming more of an organizational lever that folks are pulling to just maximize returns for their boards. Talk to me about what you see the future of work being as we think about this next, let's say 12 to 18 months. It's hard for me, Gardy, not to think that we're about to hit another Great Depression, but I'm curious as to what are you sensing, feeling, and seeing as you're working with these executive leadership teams?
Yeah. So as I kind of mentioned, the big picture, 10,000 feet, navigating, the storm of uncertainty while, trying to stay, relevant, right, to the moment, and B, what is coming, as you're mentioning, is really what leaders are needing to do. And the way I've been talking to folks about this is that in order to do this well in this polycrisis, uncertain moment that we're living, leaders have to, at once, be really grounded in what are the core values of my organization, and how these are tied to, mission and vision, and how do I show up, right, for my people, recognizing and honoring the uncertainty from a place of care, from a place of being, honest about what the challenges are, and that, we don't have all the answers, but we have all of the tools and all of the strengths and capacities within this team together, if we're working as a well-oiled machine, to step up to the challenge. So, in terms of the future of work, I would say, in some ways, we know more and more, right, that the old models of leadership, right, the hierarchical models of leadership, they were never as effective as they needed to be to actually allow for, the 10x kind of innovation to be possible. And B, we know that, the generation of workers that are coming into the workforce aren't really going for it anymore. And yeah, go for it.
They not, man. Man, Gardy, I'm hearing stories, man, of these of major brands. It's about global brands. They're struggling to retain some of these Gen Z folks for like 30 days. And I think, and I'll say this, right? Like, it's funny, man. I'm becoming the boomers that we laugh about, right? And this is what I mean, right? So this is what I mean. So my wife and I, we bought our home in 2000, and our first home, we bought it in 2011, and we bought a second home right before rates went crazy again in 2000, and I think 21 or 22. I really can't remember. But the point is that we got them at crazy rates, and like we had tons of equity, and I'm kind of like, man, it's not like, praise God, like it's not that bad. But when you look at Gen Zers, the world they're coming into, they ain't never gonna be able to buy no house. Like they got mountains of debt. The job prospects are low. If I was them, I wouldn't be going for this neither. There's no path, right? Like in 2011, I graduated from college in 2011. Oh no, so I bought my house in 2012. Okay, cool. Bought my house in 2012. But the point is that when I got out of college, like there were houses in Houston that cost like $80,000, $130,000. You can get into that.
You could get into that.
You can make it work. You could be a teacher and buy a house, 10, 12 years ago. Right. And so like, I don't like, to your point about just not going for it. I just want to triple click on that, because I think like Gen Zers right now have an option. They could say, hey, I could be broke and never buy a house and have a job, or I could be broke and never buy a house, or never do this and that and the third and don't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm gonna just go not have a job. I'm gonna just go live with my parents, and I'll just figure it out some other way. Because what's the point? I think the incentives, to your point earlier, like the incentives, the landscape has changed. I think the carrot hasn't just gotten smaller, like the carrot's kind of disappeared.
Yeah. It not only has the ability to actually begin to adult, right, for a lot of Gen Zers, has been shrinking as the data has been proving, but these are also folks who have grown up in a space of understanding that, hey, being inclusive is not about being soft, right? Engaging in a workplace where mental health of employees is recognized as an imperative for not only retaining your human resources, but ensuring that, that they are able to actually, support, your business, your organization in the best way possible. Gen Z knows, hey, I need to prioritize my healthcare, my mental health, and my employer needs to do the same. Right. And, they're also growing up in a globalized world where what is happening, in Tokyo impacts, or at least is known by, folks anywhere in Texas, and they're thinking and talking about it. And so because of that, I think the future of this, of work is also being able to hold that, when we're talking about our organizations, whether the organization has a global footprint or not, you have to be mindful of the ways that, translocal experiences are being seen, thought about, and heard, and addressed by your employees, your leaders, and your client base as well. So thinking about, that then results in being at least aware of the histories and the differences of how people hold and think and talk about whether it's race or ethnicity or religion or, all these different key identifiers that, honestly, beyond who we are as individuals and as people also are important to how we're both perceived and how we perceive the world. Right. So those are some of the things that I think will need to continue to be held in that way.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're gonna have to see, because I don't know. It's in there. We had another guest on just talking about the job market, right? Talking about the landscape of work today. And she coined it like it's a corporate revolution. And I like that. I also think that this is someone else called it like, it's like our second Reconstruction right now. Now that invokes like other cultural notes that I'm not really trying to get into in this moment, but I agree, right? Like that there's obviously a desire from the executive class to reshape the idea of like, and the people's relationship with work and just like being here in this country. It impacts everybody. And I think there's something to be said about how willing the masses are going to be to go along with that, right? So, this idea, if you automate everything, if you AI everything, if you outsource everything, well, at what point do you expect the worker here to like go along with that, right? I mean, at some point, people are just going to say, no, right? But look, man, I really want to do a part two. As I say that, I want to do a part two. But look, before we get out of here, Gardy, first of all, man, where can people learn about you, your work? Where can people engage you further? Like, give us all of that.
Yeah. So my business work website is gjgtrainingandconsulting.com. So that's pretty simple, straightforward. You can, connect with me in many different ways there. Hop on a call through Calendly, and of course I'm on LinkedIn. That is the social media platform that I'm most active on. And so literally just search for Gardy Guiteau. There aren't too many of us out there. So search for me, connect with me, follow me, and and I love being in conversation with folks. And at the end of the day, I think as it relates to the importance of this work, GJG Training and Consulting is about dialogic inclusion work at the intersections, right? And so that really is about making sure that we're prioritizing engaging with one another from a place of, as we started, at the outset, from a place of mutual understanding and respect that we don't have all the answers and we don't understand all the contours of a problem. And so the only way that we can actually move forward in any context is if we begin with recognizing each other's human dignity, holding that the issue of how we show up is intersectional, both in terms of we have all these different ways that we show up and are seen or perceived, and that the issue that we're dealing with also have intersectionality to them. And when we do that within a frame that is globalized, transnational, then we're able to actually answer some real questions about the fact that you could be in, in Cali and engaging with a bunch of workers, and they're bringing to you challenges related to caste system, in India, because that came across the border with them and their ancestry. And so unless you're aware that what you're dealing with in your workplace is a caste issue, you might mistake it for simply, race or bigotry or, something else. And understanding that, hey, colorism is something that cross-cuts across, experiences as well. So yeah, that's kind of what we're into, holding that for leaders to be effective, you have to start with people, and you have to start with dialogue, and you have to not put the onus on individuals, but support your people while creating a frame that is accountable to them in order to move your organization forward.
Gardy, thank you so much, man. It was a long time coming. I told you these twins, they double teamed me, man. It reminds me of that scene in was this Winter Soldier? I can't remember, but whatever. When Bucky threw the shield at Iron Man and then bounced off, and Steve caught it. Then Steve punched Iron Man again. I'm getting my tail whooped in here. So yeah, listen, man. I look forward to having you back. We got to have a part 2. I love the work that you're doing. Y'all click the links in the show notes to learn more about Gardy and the work that he's leading. And listen, I'll say this too, with Gardy still here, is like, without intentional work related to building your people and your teams and driving positive employee experience, you will not have an effective customer experience. You will not have an effective business. So this work is critical, irrespective of what the political talking heads are saying. How you team is always going to be something that you have to be mindful of, and you need to bring in expertise to help guide those conversations and optimize your time, especially in a season where delivery is so compressed. So we don't really have time for like 6-7 day workshops. When you need someone who's ready to come in, understand, deliver insight, give you the guidance, and then help allow you to keep on going by your way. Gardy, thank you so much, my brother. And I didn't say this at the top of the pod, but your beard is very well moisturized. Salute to you, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, man. God bless you.
All right, brother. Likewise. Peace, peace. Thank you.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.